Hello, everybody. Welcome to the sunny Southeast this morning. Glad to have you joining us. As people are spooling in there, if you can drop any notes in the text or in the chat, just to let us know that you're here, that you can see the screen okay, and that you're with us. We really appreciate that. Really exciting morning lined up here from the Southeast this morning to hear about the evolution of the employee experience in 2023. So really excited to get into that. I'd like to thank all the panelists for joining us and taking the time out to share with us their experience coming into this year to exceptional workplaces and also exceptionally different workplaces, but having a lot in common and a focus on building the community, a knowledge share, and some key takeaways that hopefully will be useful to everybody joining us this morning. So you're very welcome along. Great to see you in here. Please, any questions that arise, nice to see Aoife, you're coming from, sun is also shining in Cork. Good to see that. And Tullamore, so good representation from around the country. Thanks to Great Place to Work team and to Fernanda, especially for setting up today. And we look forward to sort of getting stuck into that discussion. First of all, we're going to start with Padraig and Edel, both from UNUM in Carlow, who's very exciting growing technology company, and are going to give us a little bit of context on where they're working, how, you know, their sort of approach to the employee experience and how that's evolving, and some of the background and key takeaways in terms of a high growth context, attracting key talent, retaining that talent, and building a high performance, ambitious and very innovative workplace. And then we'll be coming around to a completely different workplace, also in the Southeast, from my neighbours here in Kilkenny in the Pembroke Hotel. And we'll hear from Paul in relation to how things have changed there to create that same sort of high trust based workplace scenario, and we'll get into that. So really looking forward to getting stuck in. So I see a good lot of people have joined us there, and Padraig, if you'd like to share your screen there and start to introduce us to the UNUM story. Padraig comes from Valencia in Kerry, where the internet started, for anybody who isn't too clear on that, right? Some people might have thought it started with the US military in the 60s at some time, but no, it actually started with the first cable that was laid from Valencia, and Padraig very proudly hails from there. He lives in Kildare with his wife and his daughter, and he's the managing director of UNUM in Carlow. So Padraig, over to you.
Morning all. So thanks for the opportunity, Jim, and it's great to, I suppose, tell the UNUM story. So it's been an interesting couple of years, but I suppose we'll probably start by giving you just a little brief overview, I suppose, of what, who are UNUM, what do we actually do, and what do we do in Ireland. We're not a well-known brand because we don't trade locally, but we're quite a substantial brand in our own right. So you'll see that everywhere we sub-tag ourselves as Technology Centre in Carlow. So UNUM's history, right? So while we say we're a technology centre here locally, our overall group is a supplementary income insurer in the US, and we provide benefits to nearly 41 million people globally. So quite a large business in its own right. It's a Fortune 260 size company, so a large public US insurer, and it's been around 175 years. So fairly stable. For anybody out there, right? And we're 15 years in Ireland this year as well. So we're delighted to, to be based here as well, right? So the play in Ireland was very much a technology talent play. So it was to set up a talent centre here in Ireland, because UNUM recognised from a long way out that the traditional insurance business has to transform. And we openly say that we're going to be a technology business that sells insurance rather than an insurance company that uses technology. So it's that sort of culture, mindset, et cetera, that's in the place. So pre-pandemic, et cetera, we were on a large scale digital transformation program, and we've been on that program for 7-10 years probably. And we've a lot of legacy behind us, but we've a lot of sort of innovative technology solutions that we've actually delivered over that period. And the operation in Ireland was purposely located in Carlow, so near to Dublin, big population centre, but far enough away to create a sort of lifestyle play for people, but also very close to third level institutions. And it's been a very strong partnership with the local colleges here from day one. So it's something that it scaled up relatively slowly, but then we accelerated about probably 3 years ago. And just pre-pandemic, and even during the pandemic, then we decided to actually double down on our technology transformation. So we've nearly doubled it, or we will have nearly doubled it over the last 2+ years by probably mid-year this year. And you would have seen last week as well, we would have announced the week before that we're continuing to grow, and we've about 50 roles we'll be releasing this year as well. So sort of bucking the trend in technology that's actually out there. Our profile generally is quite a young profile in terms of, sort of young, vibrant talent, taking people from colleges, etc. To give you a sense of it, our intern program this year will be 30 interns. Would have been 25 last year. We hired probably 80% of those last year. And overall, over the years, we've hired about 60-70% of the actual interns that have actually come through the program here. And that's, it's quite unique. So I suppose we have a center where the brand isn't known, so we have to actually educate people on the brand. We have a location maybe outside Dublin, which, for technology folks, they've got to figure out that there's an opportunity actually there. But it plays really nicely into an actual lifestyle and community type presence as well. We were one of the best workplaces in technology, awarded by Great Place to Work last year, which is great. We're very excited by that, and a huge amount of pride in that. And I suppose it's, the culture is something that we work hard on to actually make it compelling for people and keep people engaged. And I suppose over the last couple of years, that's been more of a challenge, or it required more creativity. We get people involved a lot in community as well. So we support a lot of local charities, or international or national events like the Big Idea, etc. And we try and I suppose give back where we can. So our purpose, as you would have seen on the opening slide, is sort of helping the working world thrive throughout life's moments. So generally, when they're dealing with ourselves, when they call a UNUM contact center in the US or elsewhere, there's something has happened for them, and they're looking to actually draw down on their sort of insurance protection, their salary income protection that they actually have. So I suppose we're very conscious of that, and that sort of connection, how people are actually dealt with. And we try and bring that purpose probably into the employee experience as well.
So Padraig, you're kind of involved in putting people's lives back together when they've had a crisis from that point of view.
Yeah, so we I suppose when they're dealing with us, I suppose we have to try and make it as simple as possible, as compassionate as possible as well. And so we try and more and more we try and help people try and I suppose focus on wellness as well, rather than just when they actually have illness. So there's a product even that's developed from here locally called Behavioral Health, which is a bit like an employee assistance program, you can think of it, but it basically connects people when they're starting to struggle with support and the right type of advice and structure that maybe helps them to actually work through it as well, right? So trying to preventative as well as actually dealing with the people in their worst life's moments.
And Padraig, you've a lot of experience in technology coming from companies like Sage and so on and so forth. Like, is Carlow and I mean this living in Kilkenny, right? So is Carlow an advantage or a disadvantage in terms of attracting and retaining talent?
Carlow, Kilkenny, firstly, it's like Smithfield, or is it Shelbyville and whatever else from The Simpsons. So it's a plus. Now it does require a bit of work, right, in terms of educating people that there is an alternative. I think in terms of in Ireland and the East Coast, I suppose where things are very Dublin centric. So even when people actually go into LinkedIn or whatever and searching for a job, they're more likely to put in Dublin than Ireland. As the actual search location. So it creates a bit of work or whatever to actually try and educate them that there is a real alternative. And, I suppose we try and set standards around that as well, right? That here, that the work the guys are actually doing here has huge impact. I could take, maybe one of 7 or 8 individual products being delivered from here that are delivering, hundreds of millions in terms of revenue every year. So this is, we openly sort of say, this is not localization, this is not maintenance, this is not a place to come to retire. There's a standard here. And, having the right talent, to your point, is key to that. So we're trying to build that brand and trying to attract people, to sort of say, okay, right, you can have it, you can have a good balance. There are opportunities out there. You just maybe need to turn your head around and look the other direction.
Okay, so you're not a fuddy-duddy insurance company. You're a technology company. You're going to work hard, and,
so
and
absolutely,
and then display those benefits. So, Edel, how has that evolved? Your thinking around all this? How has that evolved over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I think, Padraig has kind of teed it up well, right? You can see that, and we're not unique in this, pre-pandemic, we were a small team, of over 100 people based in Cardiff. So it, had a very strong on-site team presence, like lots of companies before the pandemic. And so, kind of taking you through a bit of a timeline in terms of just even, looking at, I suppose, how the employee experience changed from being on site, to working remotely, which wasn't a problem for us, right? We're a technology company. We work virtually with the US all of the time. So they were not the big rocks that we had to solve for, or, try and kind of, recalibrate or reinvent something new. For us, I suppose, as we moved through the pandemic, we always knew we were coming back to the office. And, I think we were very conscious of, kind of communicating that at that time. And, what that would look like, we didn't know, but we kept the constant kind of stream of communication of when we're back in the office, and when we know what that looks like, we'll definitely come and talk to you. So one of the things I think that when I think about our journey over the last kind of 2 years of how we've kind of navigated changing the employee experience from being at home to what does that look like coming back to the office, and how is that going to look and feel, is that, it was really instrumental that we got the managers involved. And so from very early on, when we thought about what that change curve looked like, and everybody's going to know like the likes of the ADCAR model and all of those things, but we genuinely, for many months, probably through 2021, we really did work on what was that going to look like with the managers, creating that awareness with them, bringing them through a bit of a change curve before we went to the teams and the employees, and what should, how could we make that a compelling story from an experience perspective for employees. And so that was really front and center for us in terms of like, well, what's the value? Because we do truly believe in that. There is value in being in person in the office, but what do we design that around? And so we spent probably many months meeting every month with the management team across 2021, designing. The narrative wasn't for us, it's 2 days, it's 3 days. The narrative for there is guidance and guidelines of days in the office, but we didn't lead with that. We led with, well, how do we design it? What's going to be compelling? What's going to be of value in terms of an employee coming to the office? We were very fortunate, I suppose, our team size, albeit we've gotten bigger, it's still a manageable size of just over 200. So we were really able to immerse ourselves down into the organization and talk to employees. So communication with the managers and communication with employees during that time to bring us through what I would call was kind of like a soft launch, and then right up into the actual change itself in terms of, so what does that look like then very practically in coming to the office? And so I suppose being a technology organization, we were able to organize ourselves around key meetings or events or sessions that the employees themselves value coming to the office for. So things like big room planning, or QBR days, or on-site events. And then you bring the free food. We didn't lead with the free food. That was like a sub bullet. So if you come in, pizza will be here. So, and it has been really successful, right? Because it felt more organic. And then you were able to talk to, the teams about, so what are our team days going to be? When will we all come together in the office? And so recognizing that there's value in disconnecting and being, in your home office, whatever that looks like, because you need that downtime or, you're on back-to-back team calls or whatever, which is, was kind of very typical for us, versus what do you come to the office for and what does that look like? That was more the narrative that we built out with the managers, and very important to have the managers engaged in that. And I think it just helped in terms of our success in rolling it out.
Okay, so let me just sort of recap a little bit. You're head of HR there. You bring a lot of experience from the insurance industry, all of that, and then in terms of the conversations, you started with the purpose of coming together, and the sort of key events first of all, and then you engaged managers in that discussion in order to start to build that return and that new evolution. So it's not leading out with, be in the office, here's our policy. It was leading out, why would we come together? Where does that add value? What does that look like? And then working through it from there.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. And I think it was really important even for the managers to understand why hybrid is the model for us. What's the value in how, and also I think we got very clear about the why very quickly. And that was really helpful from the point of view of.
So what is the why? I'm curious about that. Why is hybrid for you?
And because there's definitely, I'm sure there's people on the call, they're like, no, well, we can operate fully remote. Well, we're very much an innovation center, and so coming together to be creative. One of the big things I think that it was really important to help solve for is technology professionals need a learning environment. They constantly want to develop, they constantly want to be honing their craft and their skills, and we hadn't solved for that doing that virtually, right? So we could throw all the Coursera courses or the LinkedIn courses or any of those things, but one of the things that folks really value is coming into rooms like this where there's whiteboards and coming in together, and designing out and doing architecture kind of discussions and all of those things, which is part of their development, which is part of their learning. And so they were the things that that's why big room planning, or retro meetings to look back and see what we did and how we could do it differently. There's value in those meetings for those individuals to do it collectively in a room where they can be creative, where they can be, their innovative juices can flow, but they feel like they're learning and they're developing and that their career is progressing. So all of that, some of that can be captured virtually, but I think, with the individuals themselves, I think they recognize that more of that can be done, I suppose, in person in the office as a collective.
Okay, so I suppose the key message is here, the sort of key takeaway is that if you're trying to design or have an opportunity to update, start with purpose and then move on to value. And that's going to be the case whether or not I'm running a hotel or whether or not I'm working in a virtual environment or whatever. So it's a key piece that I could apply to any kind of change management about engaging people around what's of value to them, what's of value to the company in that design.
Yeah, and I think people need to, when we talk about like the likes of an ADKAR model and stuff like that, the desire piece needs to be given time and attention, right? You may not necessarily, lots of people don't agree with, they're like, well, I don't want to come into the office, or one thing or another. So they don't have to agree with the change. And lots of people, because, we got comfortable and our habits changed, right? So it is about really tapping in and drilling down into the desire, right, in terms of, what that would look like for people. And I think we spent a long time at doing that, and it really did work. So I think you're right. I think it would apply regardless of the organization.
And what does that mean in practice? I mean, my desire is to work whenever I feel like it, in the way that I want it, right? So, and people should work around me. So what would you say to me in that situation?
Yeah, well, it ties back to the
I'm fairly clear on desire, right?
Yeah. It ties back to the purpose. And I think even when we were recruiting at the time, and we'd the highest volume of recruitment we ever had, because we were so clear about what we were as a culture and as a brand, and what our, I suppose, kind of ways of working were going to be into the future and the future of work, because we were pretty clear on that early doors in 2021. And while we were scaling the teams, that was a huge advantage to us, because we didn't talk about the 2 days in the office. We didn't lead with that, even though that's where the candidates wanted to go. We got the managers heavily involved with us in TA and in the Talent Act team to really talk about the opportunity, our purpose, I suppose what makes us interesting, like why choose us? And then we talked about what does it look like to come to the office and what did that mean and why? And we talked about things like which resonated, right, with somebody like you. If you're a technologist and you understand and your desire, we were talking about, well, we want to come together on big room planning days, and they were going, oh yeah, I'd want to be in person for that, because I can really see the value in that. So we really broke it down into very practical things, I think, as well, during that time. And it's not, we didn't get it right all of the time, we definitely didn't, but it did mean there wasn't a lot of rework. So I recognize, even through just my own network, there are lots of companies that are now maybe undoing, right? We were very clear from the get-go what we were going to be. And I think that's really helped, now that we're in full flow and into 2023.
And what would you be saying to me if I wanted to work? I know it's a very nice question in there from Alison. If I wanted to work there fully remotely 5 days a week, and just you're saying, this purpose and coming together is really important for these key value add activities.
Yeah.
How would you deal with me as an outlier?
Yeah, we've enabled the managers quite a lot, right, to have those one-on-one conversations, because we do have those conversations. They do come up, right? And, we break it down in terms of what is it? And if it's a case of, well, I just don't want to commute anymore, or it's easier for me just to roll out and log on, and, they're not legitimate reasons, but equally, that's not who we are. And that's why it's really important to understand, well, what's your culture? What are you trying to drive? What do you back into from a team spirit and an energy and all of those things? And, I think lean on, I suppose, what it is, what your purpose is and what you're trying to drive. And that's what a lot of the managers have been able to do, and quite successfully been able to do it and work through it. Some of them have taken longer in terms of conversations, but thankfully, we haven't gotten into any major retention issues because of it. And I think that's probably testament to the level of communication and engagement on a one-to-one basis that we've gotten into.
So the level of clarity that you were able to bring to those broader discussions gave you guide rails to make sure that you came up with something that was sustainable for the company.
Yeah, and Padraig and I didn't just make it up. We took guidance from enterprise in terms of this is what's important, and then we localized it. And I think that's the piece in terms of that's really, I think it's part of our secret sauce, and that we're able to be part of a big global multinational. We are very much, a key player in terms of us as a local kind of campus. We call ourselves another campus in the US. It doesn't matter that we're in Ireland. So all same things apply in terms of policies and things. But we were able to take the concept and localize that and manage it and manage the change curve and all of those things, which I think has made it probably a little bit more successful for us here in Ireland, maybe potentially than other campuses that we have in the US, just purely because of size. And I think that's a really big advantage that we have.
So how do you localize exactly? What steps do you take?
How do we localize? So, you have to think of, I suppose, we're not the magnitude of the US. We don't have the same challenges, they just have to, I suppose they have different challenges from a market perspective when they're looking at retention and attrition and all of those things. Even, in terms of recruitment, we just didn't have necessarily the same obstacles to go overcome. They were different. So we're given, I suppose, the bandwidth to be able to take, the guidance, the guardrails, if you want to call it, and apply that so that we're being consistent. But how we do it and how we approach it, we probably have carte blanche to go at it. Yeah.
Okay. How important is that middle layer of managers? Because that would have been expanding at a fairly substantial rate in order to grow at the level that you were growing, and I imagine that there must be some learnings or keys in there in terms of all that. You've mentioned how engaging them in the change process has been critical. Is there anything else?
Yeah. I think one of the things that before I joined, Padraig had introduced kind of like an engagement work stream and an engagement committee. And because that middle management layer, especially in IT, and Padraig could probably talk to it better than I, but it's very delivery focused. It's very much, and so yes, in terms of, they'll be phenomenal at driving high performing teams from a delivery perspective, but we also needed them to kind of lean into the engagement and the career progression and, all of those conversations as well. So you know, it was a learning curve for them on many fronts, I suppose, over the last 2 years. And one of the big successes that we have is that we introduced, you know, it's called our UNUM, it's our engagement committee. All of the management team are involved in different work streams, and we've just evolved that over the last 2 or 3 years. And I think it's been probably one of the biggest levers in terms of change and affecting change, in terms of bringing in initiatives, getting the managers to own and, you know, be kind of accountable for delivering, you know, certain kind of, you know, different under different work streams. So they've been hugely important in many aspects of the changes that we've gone through over the last 2 or 3 years.
Is there anything that you thought would work and didn't?
Oh, Padraig had a really good one the other day. We were talking about this. I might hand over to Padraig. He was like, yeah, we didn't do that very well.
Well, there was I think a couple of elements, right? So forced fun was one that we talked about, right? So I suppose when we started to I suppose try and remobilize people on a larger scale rather than whatever works for you. I suppose some of the community activities that we did, we probably tried to be a little bit too much organized fun. And actually the learning straight away was sort of actually, no, just let them talk, just let them reconnect, just let them actually, you know, re-engage with each other. And like that sense of community is actually really, really important. And it's just back off out of it. So we pivoted away from the organized fun. And you know, I enjoyed it on the day, but it didn't work for everybody, right? So I suppose actually the simplest thing we've done in some ways is that as people came back into the office or starting to come back into the office on, you know, whatever number of days a week they're doing it, there is a danger, I think, that they come in whatever side door they want to come in, sit at their desk, don't see anybody, don't engage with anybody or whatever else, go back out. And it reinforces in their mind their perception of, oh, maybe there isn't value in this, right? So one of the daft things we've done is 11s. So at 11:15 every day, people come down to the actual canteen and they reconnect. So it's getting people out of we've spread across 3 floors, so it gets them out away from their desk, come down, they have a chat, reconnect with people, have a little bit of, you know, we feed them or whatever else, but you know, it's really just to actually see people and reconnect. And it's better than it was, you know, pre-pandemic, you know, from that perspective. You know, that's worked really, really well, not over-engineered. And similarly then when we have, you know, group connects and stuff like that, it's like that. I think the other bit that we got wrong initially was probably just equity, you know, in terms of the types of capabilities and stuff like that we provided to people, because, you know, we're a large, you know, multi-country rollout and different countries doing things slightly different, you know, so you have to be, then you're trying to catch up with each other because everybody was running to try and actually do things within the same guidance, but trying to actually do things that they felt right for their actual staff. And that then sort of created this, okay, they're getting monitors at home, we're not, you know, when are you going to do that? All this type of thing. So it took a little bit of time to catch up on that. But I think they're some of the learnings, I think.
Okay. I mean, we've come across from a good few clients similar to yourselves that there's been, I suppose, the challenge of the local management localizing this from a, you know, from the point of view of a significantly different culture in the US around how these things moved and how fast they moved, to you know, to sort of translate that in a way that was appropriate to the Irish market. That, yeah. I mean, was that the case for you? It doesn't appear to be, or was it?
So going back to, I suppose, the local management, right? So the middle tier management, I think there's a danger when you're a remote operation or you're not sort of, you know, you don't see yourself as the center. You're there waiting for somebody to do something for you, rather than actually, you know, the management being empowered. And I think that's the conversation that Edel and others have led, is to actually get them, that management tier, engaged and empowered, that they feel they can change things. So, you know, who is this person that's going to appear and actually do something for you? Do you know what I mean? So that's the danger, I think, and I've seen that multiple places where, you know, the sort of the remote or subsidiary culture, if you're not in the actual whatever the mothership actually is, that they can be this sort of just sitting and waiting, these guys, you know, don't do anything for us or whatever. And actually that, you know, getting them really actively engaged, say we can change things, you know, we can absolutely change things, you know, and we can, you know, we can create our own culture that's highly aligned and everything like that. but that we're actually localizing it to a level that you can put your own mark on it, and that's very exciting and engaging for people, you know. And that's part of our brand, to sort of, you know, like a technology startup. You know, we're a 175-year-old startup, you know, so actually come in, shape this thing, and be proud of it, you know. And so we're creating that sort of pride in the jersey. As a Kerry man, I identify to that maybe all too easily, you know.
And you've just actually in different language than we use, this, you know, described what I would think is a perfect definition of a great place to work. A place where you can be involved in the change, and you can be proud of where you work, and you're expected to be very active in that change and work hard, right? So terribly well done. We're going to come back to in a few minutes for when I open up the panel to some more questions, and please come keep the questions rolling in. I'm going to come to Brian in a few moments, which would talk just a little bit about the Great Place to Work process. But first of all, I want to talk to Paul in as I've said, is a substantially different workplace near to me, just a couple of 100 yards down the road from where I am in Kilkenny. So to this fantastic property, which is the Pembroke Hotel in Kilkenny. I'm sure many of you know it. Paul's been the general manager there for the past 12 years. He's from Erlingford in almost County Tipperary, but possibly Kilkenny. So that's up for discussion. But over to you, Paul. You tell us about the Pembroke journey of how it is that you've evolved the employee experience.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, you can hear me okay?
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's a big title here. It's leveraging your employee story to enhance your brand's customer experience. So hopefully we're going to just break that down a little bit. And before that, yeah, I've worked in the hotel this is my lucky for some 13th year. So I've been there for quite a while now, and moved back from Scotland in 2010 and took over a role as assistant manager there, and shortly after became the GM. So an amazing journey over 13 years. There's a bit of kind of a startup mindset. It was a brand new business. So I'll take you to the journey in a second, but just wanted to pose a question possibly before we started. And that's, what kind of business would you like to work in yourself? And business A, okay, treats its employees well, cares for its customers and the community, well, generally a great place to work, employee feedback is positive, reputation for providing personal and professional growth opportunities are in place. And also it's actually sounds like a really good place to work. I'm in. And great actually to see from Edel and Padraig, a lot of this came from their side as well. So business A, really, really good. Or business B, you know, it has the above, but also creates the opportunity to be part of something bigger, you know, to have that purpose, you know, beyond individuals and beyond roles. And I suppose that's the key piece for me. I think we're in such a competitive landscape right now, and I think there's skill shortages is across all industries. And I think if companies don't look at creating this kind of compelling employee value proposition, not only to attract key talent but to keep their talent, I think there's going to be you know, a big disconnect from the top companies. And I suppose for the Pembroke,
Technology is great, isn't it?
Technology is fantastic.
Yeah.
I suppose our competitive employee value proposition is, as custodians of one of Kilkenny's landmark locations, we honestly believe we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to create something special and leave our mark on Kilkenny. You know, that's a big statement, and it goes beyond all the individuals and the roles I mentioned. It goes beyond pulling pints, serving tables, cleaning rooms. It goes beyond all of us. You know, we now have a duty to leave this remarkable site that we're on in a better place. You know, so big value proposition to be part of this. You know, this re-inspired me when we dug deep this year, and we worked at a company called Core Story last year, apologies. And it got us, like, we were doing a lot of these things already, but it was important to formalize it. You know, we came up and we realized that this is our opportunity. The big question is, how do we do all of that? Because it's massive. But before I go into that, I might just give you, Jim, a flavor of where we've come from. So in 2009 was our kind of new beginning. The hotel was originally leased, and that lease was terminated in 2009, and it's been owner operated since then from 1st of April. And I joined actually the business shortly after in 2010. And I'd worked for an oil-rich company, and I'd worked for a big 5-star brand property, all owned by like filthy rich Arabs. Very different properties, all with different focuses. I was there a month, and the owner sat me down and he said, "Look, Paul, look, the thing we're going to focus on here is forget all the other stuff. Profit will follow." And I didn't really understand what he was talking about for a while. I was like, "Profit will follow. Okay, yeah, okay." But I eventually got it that, you know, it's not about just all shareholder value. You know, it's more of a stakeholder value approach, where we're looking at the team, we're looking at the customers, we're looking at the community, doing the right thing. You know, so that really took a lot of pressure off me at the start to actually work on building the team, evolving the business, you know, and really finding what the ideal customer for us was. So that first 2 years of working in the business was a lot of fun, building that team. And in 2013, we started kind of forming.
Those were tough years, Paul. Like, you know, I mean,
yeah.
For those who don't, you know, maybe who hadn't joined the workforce at that point or wasn't fully in this was after the financial crash in the industry that was probably most affected by the financial crash, with lots of zombie properties around the country being owned by funds, you know, really a huge emphasis on driving down cost, refinancing. You know, it was a really difficult time.
It was, but you know what the best thing was, Jim? I was protected from all of that. Like, we were running the business like it wasn't in a recession, and that might sound a bit mad, but imagine if we're looking at the business, sweat the bottom line, you know, turnover staff, like reduce costs, like that happened, but it was in parallel to us building this big business model and vision for a future, you know, and that's, I think, what stood us the test of time. And, you know, so it was very on the floor, on the fly in the initial few years. But in that 2013 time, that's when we really started to formalize that strategy. And we introduced a thing called EFQM, the European Foundation for Quality Management. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but
sure.
Basically there's some fundamental concepts of excellence within that, and there's a framework. And when we done all of the work with that, and we went through the concepts of excellence, what was really important to us was that key driving pillar was our people. Now, everybody talks about the people, you know, it's all about the people, but actually genuinely for us, we had this amazing, energetic young team who wanted to build something. And that time we won multiple awards. We won Employee of the Year multiple times. We won Invest in Skills awards. And the big win for our business back then, which I'm still proud of, was we got awarded level 4 EFQM. Like, we went in as to be recognized for excellence. And after putting in our submission, we had 2 assessors come on site for 2 days, and they went through the whole process about, okay, well, how did we do what we do? Did we do actually what we said? What are the results? And we scored well over 400 points, which was the highest in the Southeast at that time, which was a massive for this kind of startup emerging business who was, you know, we were just having fun and doing what we were doing.
Fantastic achievement. And then what happened then when you hit your stride? What was
so 2017 to 19, we started hitting our stride, business growth. We doubled our growth. We nearly doubled our team. But actually, the kind of key piece for us was that EFQM became redundant, because what we found is that the bigger the team got, it was actually hard to translate into our employee voice. They didn't get it. It was clunky, it was complicated, the language was too complicated. So we said, you know what? We have elements of this we're going to use, but we're going to break it and we're going to make our own. And the Pembroke way, our new business framework, started to evolve. And I'll talk a bit about that in a minute in future slides. So 2020, we were forecasted for our best year yet. And the dreaded C, as we all know about, came, and we just had to go into survival mode. And there was a lot of, I suppose, really hard times in the business over that year. But actually, we've come out of it reimagined. I'll just put in a note here about 250K on fresh air, which I thought you might enjoy, because it sounds a bit mad when you say it out loud. But we put in an air handling system into the business that actually it brings in fresh air from the outside, but through smart technology is able to recover 80% of the heat. So it's also important for a sustainability story, which is kind of parallel to everything we do. Just kind of touching on our culture piece, you know, and from this original point about profit will follow. Like, I was sitting in the restaurant, the hotel is closed, like there's nobody about, we don't know whether we're going to reopen or not. And the owner of the hotel came in and said to me, Paul, what do you think about this air handling system? And this is what it's going to do. And this is, you know, this is after conversations about looking at all sorts of other technology with HEPA filters and ozone sprays and all this kind of stuff. But this was a really smart, sustainable way to do it. And he said, it's going to cost about 200 grand. And I was like, sorry, how much? It's going to cost 200 grand. Oh, okay. And he says, what do you think? And I said, look, you know, we are in a funny time right now, and we discussed it, and we both agreed it's the right thing to do for our customers and for our people, you know. And what that translates to now in our organization is that we've got fresh air, really good environment in all our public areas, all our offices, all our meeting rooms, and also in our team offices. There's this air handling system that's recycling all the air, so it's massive for our business.
So you're very proud of the location, of the property, of all of that, Paul, and you've got a very supportive leader who's willing to invest and is very knowledgeable about that as well, right? So has a great confidence in that. But I suppose what a lot of people are going to be interested to hear is, you know, as you moved out of that EQM approach and the people, how did you link the purpose into it being, I suppose, easily to translate and easy for people to understand? How did that actually work?
Yeah, okay. I'll just flick ahead here. So lots of growth opportunities there in the next few years for us.
Okay.
I suppose the translating that, Jim, is where it all matters. And we've defined that into kind of our Pembroke way under 4 pieces. That's a very clear operating model. We've got our own playbook, which has just moves that are unique to us. Then that translates into an execution piece, which is in our operational plan. And then on top of that is clear measures and KPIs. And that model is continuously assessed and refined. You know, this is some of the language from the EFQM, but made our own. But in the middle of all that is an aligned leadership approach. And I suppose this is where we fell down at the start, is that the leadership team had a concept, but the line level people didn't know what the hell we were talking about. You know, and that was the EFQM disconnect when we were talking about all this language. So our challenge was now to have a ground up language that everybody could buy into and that we were all aligned, you know. That direction then in the Pembroke way explained, it comes back to your point and this core message. So now we're all linked by this core message that we have this once in a lifetime opportunity to create something special and leave our mark on Kilkenny. You know, and that brings in our vision and our values and these guiding principles, you know, our standards, our behaviors. And that model then links down into the next pillars, which are the delivery via the playbook. And what the 5 key pillars for us is succeeding through the talent of our people. It's sustaining outstanding sales results. It's adding value to each customer. It's process and systems excellence. And then it's sustainability is everyone's business. Now, sustainability actually is a new piece for us. We've added into the model. It was always important to us. We've done loads of work on sustainability. But I think if we don't have this as a pillar going forward, I think every business, you know, we're not going to survive. So that's a new one. The next layer to that then is very.
And how was this developed from the ground up, Paul? So like this makes an awful lot of sense as being your model. You own it. You're picking the best from what has worked before. You're simplifying it. You're translating. But how did the ground up piece work?
The ground up is, and this is one of the beauty things about our culture, is that, and I learned this a lot when I done my MBA, and we went into lean and understanding. You go back to the Gemba, and it's that employee voice. It's listening. It's not from your ivory tower shouting down all of this. It's actually working on the ground, listening to the team members. It's doing the surveys. It's, you know, seeing what's working well. It's, you know, it's a kind of compound effect of multiple things, Jim, from the ground up to understand our positioning, and then to get to this level. But really, I think the key for all of this is having management really clear on what they're accountable for. And I suppose that's an area where if you talk about a mistake or maybe a mismove, you know, that's where we didn't get clear enough, you know, where managers are doing things around these pillars, but we didn't really identify like the key aspects of that. So I suppose now there's really clear management accountabilities in our playbook under all of these. And we have that execution via an operational plan. And linked on top of that then is all of these results that we, you know, that's our measure of success if we don't have clear measures. And just a slide which you can't read, but there's lots of measures that we look at in the business. You know, there's from customer to marketing to operations, all this kind of stuff. But taking all that out and filtering out what's important, we use this piece of software called results.com, which our strategy sits in. We run our meetings in, and it also has this results dashboard. And I always try to describe this as when I eventually get to run the hotel from Tenerife, I'll be able to grab my mobile phone and I'll look in here and I'll go, okay, everything's in green, everything's fine. I'll have my other glass of sangria. Or I'll look at the reds and I'll go, okay, well, there's something here that's not right. Or there's an amber, which I may need to keep an eye on. So through a very clear color code, we have clear now a results dashboard that we know if the business is performing or not. Some of these results are automatic, that we've built in integration. Some of them have to be inputted at night time by our night team, so that when I look at this, we know that the input or the data is up to date.
So you've got a very live finger on the pulse for when you're going to keep the common touch from Tenerife and say very much, I get that. So one of the things that you've done there is really sort of translate that model into what that means for each individual. Is that am I reading that right?
Yeah, exactly. I just took a screenshot of our leadership dashboard, but that's where the main results sit. And then each team, like our food and beverage team, our marketing team, our sales team, they have a subset of these and maybe some additional ones that are relevant to them. But there's lots of them, but we just focus on a couple of ones that we need to look at frequently. And then behind that, then there's ones that we look at maybe twice a month and then monthly and so on. So the dashboard lets us facilitate all of that. In
an earlier discussion, you mentioned that you didn't use, for example, some more complicated language like competency models and so on and so forth. You simplified a lot of that. How did you decide to do that?
Simply because it didn't work. And we asked the question to ourselves, well, what's a competency? Okay, that's not sure. Is that how good you are at doing something, or is that something you're expecting me to do? We just found that these words, like the HR directors of the world will really understand the difference between efficient and effective and competency and skill and all this kind of stuff. But actually, who cares? What we really need to get at is what clearly am I accountable for under sales? Under what do I need to do around my people that's going to make them successful? With clear things like you need to hold team meetings, you need to have your team surveys, you need to address the team surveys. What are people saying in your department? This kind of stuff. So in now our playbook, there's this competency, accountabilities piece, which is really clear. And I think that's going to be the key for all of this.
So I mean, one of the things I see from your results is your results of the Great Place to Work survey is that there's great clarity around the level of responsibility people have and how clear they are for that and how little you micromanage them after that, right? So we have evidence directly from the employees in relation to how they feel about that, and yet you have your finger very much on the pulse here in terms of the performance of the business. How do you know that, because some of what you've done here is actually quite different, Paul, than let's say, than you would have learned in your MBA down at the Southeast University, right?
Yeah.
So, and you threw out some of the, I'm going to say, the long established, recognized models to develop your own model. How do you know that it's working?
It goes back to this screen that we're looking at, Jim. It's, I'll just flick on actually to the next screen as well, because it all links. Long-term success for us is to create that seamless linkage from the vision and that message, to what we do every day. Okay, and that's that compelling vision we spoke about, and that links into that core message that everyone's clear about we're part of something bigger. But the big kicker here is on our values, and the values for us is just, that's make or break for our business. And we have an unwavering belief in our values. Just to tell you a quick story about, I went through this 6-hour interview process with this super duper manager a few years back pre-COVID, and he ticked all the box, education, said all the right things. And within a week, he was disrespecting his the line level employees that were working with him. He wasn't he just wasn't respecting, and he completely lied in his interview. He lasted a week within the business, even though he was going to bring so much value. But I suppose for us to be true, and it goes back to a question about, what is the long-term success is we have to be true to our values, because long-term that will be a win for us. And then those values translating into what we do in terms of behaviors, to bring those values to life, like knowing your customer, bringing energy and passion, making sure that our team are planning and sweating the detail, that we're consistently growing together. And number 7 on that there, be the person who brings the best out of those around us. That's important to us. So it's the vision, unwavering belief in our values, you know, living the values through our day-to-day behaviors, and then this delivery of it all through smart, lean procedures and systems, you know, making the job fun. God almighty, like we looked at some of the manuals, and there was 250 pages of manuals with dust and like unnecessary stuff that just didn't need to be in there. So we feel like just having really lean procedures, you know, it'll actually make the job fun, you know, get people focusing on what's important. And I suppose that overall leads to an overall more fulfilling roles within the business. And then, like, we need to keep an eye on these results. And I suppose that's why I really sweated the detail on having that dashboard that we can link back. Okay, well, what are we doing in terms of our customers? Okay, what is our net promoter score, for instance, or what is we use a company called Revenate, and you get departmental customer service scores, and everyone's responsible for a score within their department. What are people saying about us? You know, what way is it moving? What are their competitors doing? You know, benchmarking. You know, Great Places to Work was the next evolution for us. You know, looking then at actually, okay, we're doing our own internal surveys, but let's benchmark against best practice. And actually, our surveys were literally identical scores. And now, you know, that's giving us more information about how we can take it to the next level. So it's a continuous improvement model of just improvement. And
Fantastic.
I think.
Okay, Paul, look, thanks very much. That's been really, really useful. Again, I'd ask, I know many of the people who have attended today and who are on the call at the moment and who have expressed interest in this would love to talk to you about some of that, because there's a level of innovation and involvement there through that innovation, as you know, which is really, really impressive. And Brian is just going to talk a little bit about how the Great Place to Work process works for a few minutes, and then we're going to open up to questions and answers to everybody, and bring back everybody in the panel at that point. So Brian is a colleague of mine who's been with Great Place to Work longer than I have, and it's a real pleasure to welcome him. He hails from Bray. So Brian.
Great, thank you, Jim, and thanks for all that sharing earlier on. Just as Jim says, an opportunity. I know some of our audience are not as familiar maybe with Great Place to Work as our clients there who have spoken through the process and how they've used Great Place to Work. So just really to take a couple of minutes to set the scene a little bit in terms of what the process looks like. And I suppose how a lot of organizations first identify us is through these brands, Great Place to Work, and being certified. I suppose in terms of benefits of the process, certainly in terms of what our clients tell us and what we know from our research over the years, one of the top areas is talent. And really, when a lot of organizations start to talk to me for the first time around engaging, they know that, you know, being recognized as a great place to work and being certified as such is great for bringing talent and new talent and better aligned talent to their businesses. For us, a lot of it is also really important around retaining the talent that you have. So using the survey almost as a stay interview in terms of finding out what is it that's really important to your people, what is it that they value, and importantly, what is the business invested in that you are getting a return on investment from your people. So using that information then furthermore to build your employer brand and to attract better talent into the business. In terms of competitive edge, certainly being recognized as a great place to work is a competitive advantage, and how organizations celebrate that externally and importantly internally. So when they are presenting to win new business or to present themselves externally, they're stating very clearly that they are recognized as a great place to work. And then importantly, what that actually means to them as a business, with what Paul touched on there in terms of the importance of the people and the value that they contribute to the organization and the importance of their role. In terms of market returns, this comes from research analysis we've done in the US around public quoted companies and looking at their performance versus the stock market and showing that organizations that are recognized as a great place to work outperform the others. Because again, as Paul said, the profit will follow. People aligned to the business and aligned to the strategy, which the survey informs us of, will perform better for the business and to deliver for the business. In terms of benchmarking, then, this is an area we're exceptionally strong in terms of we have access to so many benchmarks. So for your business, when you're engaging with us, what this means is when we run the survey, we're able to then look at your data and use benchmarkings and use comparisons to see how do you compare to to the best or a similar organization in your industry of size or a similar growth period on the growth curve. So very simply, how does the process work? We refine this process to make it as light as possible now for the desk of HR, which is typically where it works from, I suppose, in organizations, and to make it as light a process as possible. It's driven from our survey, our employee experience survey. It's called the Trust Index survey. We prepare the survey with you in advance of launch in terms with our client success team and putting together a good project plan in terms of pre-survey communication, which is important. And then we launch the survey from Great Place to Work to all your employees and colleagues. That gives them great confidence around confidentiality and anonymity. We invite everybody to respond. And our role here is really to drive as high a response rate as possible. Typically, we keep the survey open for 2 weeks. It takes people about 10 or 12 minutes to fill in the survey. And that gives us both the insight in terms of the analysis side and also the scoring in terms of recognition, which I'll come on to in a second. There's one other piece we do ask you to fill in, which is a brief. It's a culture brief or a company brief. And in here, what we're doing is capturing your organization headlines or profile that you want to share when you're certified. And we ask you to fill this in. It takes about an hour to fill in this document. So that's one of the bigger pieces of work to do. So it's not too bad at all. We capture that information there. So once you're certified, then we're using that headline information to feature you on our website and to use that profile. So in terms of recognition then, and in terms of what that looks like, I often get asked, what's the difference between being certified and being one of the best workplaces in Ireland? So certified, as I said at the beginning, is probably this new lighter process that we have. The idea with certified is that you're not being compared or in competition to any other organization. You're working towards simply a clear standard. So it's a fixed standard, and we're very clear on what that is, and what it is that you need to achieve to be certified. So what we do is we set up and we run the survey, and then based on your score, if you achieve a score of 65%, you are certified. And I think this is why organizations have warmed to this and responded so well, because it's a simple process. You can start when suits the rhythm of the business to start. We can turn this around in 6 weeks. And importantly, once you're certified, then you're certified for 12 months and you keep your certification valid in the coming year. And in that regard, some organizations, before they go live, they position it with their people that they're engaging with Great Place to Work, with a view to being certified over the next 3 years. And the idea here being that is, if you don't get certified in the first round and the first time around, there's no problem in that. You're working towards a standard. So if you haven't achieved it, then you know what it is that we need to address. And we work on that with you to close any of those gaps. And when you run the survey again, bring you to certification or closer to certification. And then once you're certified, you're into this space in terms of best workplaces. So the opportunity then to be recognized as a best workplace on a national list. We also have other recognition opportunities now in terms of best workplace for women. If you're over 50 people in the organization, you can be included for consideration in best workplace for women. And we have some sectoral lists there in terms of best workplace for tech, which Padraig mentioned in the beginning. That's coming up in May of this year. And we also have best workplace for pharma and healthcare. So in terms of being recognized and certified, or to be recognized as one of the best, it's really then ramping up your employer brand. And this is where we're really strong through our team and our marketing team in terms of helping organizations relate what is their employee value proposition and how can they build that into their employer brand. So on the right of the screen here, it might be very small, but there's an opportunity which touches back to what I mentioned in terms of the company brief. Once you're certified, you have an opportunity to feature on our website and have a profile there. And we use the company brief to build in the headline information, but the big opportunity is for our organizations to go back in underneath and fill in their story, tell colleague stories, colleague profiles, and also post jobs in there. And this gives the
So,
opportunity.
Brian, you'll be available to take some further questions on that if anybody arises, and they could reach out to you directly in terms of the process. So that's really excellent. Thanks very much.
That's everything. Thanks a million.
If I could call back Padraig and Edel there for a moment, and Paul, I've a question for you, because a couple of questions are coming in to me there privately. So one of the questions is, so I'm working behind the bar and you have this purpose. How are you going to translate that for me so that it's meaningful for me for doing an individual job? How are you going to bring it down to the level of the individual? Sorry, Paul, you're on the proverbial mute, I think, at the moment, right? So,
sorry, Jim.
No bother.
No, good question. And I think that really has to come down to the management team, living the values. One of their accountabilities now is to live the values every day themselves, to bring the vision to life, to bring it in to just how we do business. And, we have to look at each individual employee, and this is something we're going through the business at the moment is, what is the business giving to you right now? X, what do you expect from us? Y, how can we help you? Like, what's your career and professional growth plan? What's your personal plan? So it's kind of understanding where an employee is at with us from a line level employee, how we can help them grow, whether that's with us or with someone else. But it's kind of like this shared, okay, you're here to do a job for the business, but we're also here we have a responsibility to develop you as a person. Whether you leave this business or stay here, you should have the Pembroke become a passport on your CV that you can go anywhere or do anything. That's what it means to them. Okay.
Edel, where do you see what's next, right? So what do you see into 24 and 25? Like, as Corey, as this evolves to the next stage, what's coming down the tracks?
Yeah, that's the discussions that Padraig and I are very active in, over the last while. So I suppose a big thing, we've been on a journey, right, in terms of growth and all of that, and trying to figure out, I suppose, kind of who we are and what we are now post-pandemic. I think that the next big phase for us, obviously, is around retention. Like, it is probably really doubling down in relation to how do we continue to enhance people's careers? How do we, what else do we use from an external point of view, from an internal point of view? Like, right now, we're doing a lot of like skills analysis, things that we would need in the future. So, it's really focused, I'd say, from a developmental and a learning culture perspective. So how do we drive on with that? So that's a big part of, I think, our agenda. The other, I would say, is where, we've not been able to, it's just, capacity, whatever, one thing or another, but one of the things that we really want to tap into this year, because we've naturally done quite a good job around I&D. It's just, it's just trickled along quite nicely. We've done a couple of bits and pieces, but we've got a very focused agenda now for the next couple of years. And there's 3 horizons that we've laid out in terms of what that looks like. And very specifically, how do we, from a diversity perspective, from an inclusion perspective, but one of our key goals around that is trying to increase female participation, obviously from a STEM point of view. So working a lot with the colleges, locally and regionally, but then other, national organizations to see, how we can make a difference, literally from school going age, right the way through. So that's another big, I think, area of passion for us, I would say. And, it's one that I know our employees are very passionate about. So again, going to be a big one for us over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and of course, as Cardi, as the tenure increases at UNUM, then the employee expectation around that is going to rise, and you're well ahead of where that is.
Yeah.
Padraig, I mean, what do you think? What do you see as the future here?
I suppose I don't think it's settled yet, right? And I don't think it'll be next month we have it, right? So even like the work environment and stuff like that, in terms of the office environment versus the actual home environment, like that hasn't quite settled in terms of what really works for people or really works for your community, right? So I think people have invested a lot in doing revamps and stuff like that, and we've knocked our own place around here, and we've done bits in terms of people, in terms of their home office setups, making sure they've monitors and keyboards and mouse and all that sort of thing. But I think we're still a little bit figuring it out in terms of some of the employee experience. I think, like, what we're talking about at the moment, even in which is a little bit maybe contrarian, is to actually have focus areas in the office. So come into the office to focus rather than just coming in to collaborate. Because we did a daft test last year, right, with these lights that you could put like a traffic light on top of a person's screen, right, that basically showed people that I'm on a call, that sort of had green or red or whatever else, right, so I'm busy, or was my team status or whatever. And the amount of people asking for them for home was quite an interesting revelation or insight, and said, okay, well, maybe there's opportunity here, right? So I suppose we're trying to figure that out. I think there's also bits as well, like in terms of like our purpose and values and stuff like that, I suppose are very community centric as well. So we want to try and actually, how do we bring the community side of things, or that sort of experience, back into everybody's day to day, whether they're at home or not. Do you know what I mean? To make those sort of core values, more sort of present for people, So I think there's a lot to run in this as yet, and we'll never be done.
Yeah, so exciting times ahead in that regard. And Paul, I'll leave the last word with you for hospitality and for that industry. Where do you see the future?
The future it's about bringing pride back to our industry for us, I think, and there's been lots of just bad press about businesses treating hospitality employees really badly. So I think there's a bit of a rebranding, and this is great that we're partnering with Great Places to Work. So it's continuing working with Fáilte Ireland on the Employers Excellence Programme, getting people skilled, proud, really getting back involved, because this is an amazing career. I'm so proud to work in this industry, and it's given me so many different opportunities, even to create my own business, to do other things. So anyone who really wants to look after people and have a bit of crack, and be part of something, it is a great industry and you can go anywhere with it. So it's bringing back that pride, retraining, and then just, working with Fáilte Ireland and supporting them on the journey.
Well, we're all very proud for the opportunity to work with you. Great Place to Work. We're very thankful to you for spending your time prepping for this morning and coming on this morning and being so willing and honest in terms of sharing your journey. And we're very, very thankful for that in terms of the level of expertise and care and attention that you brought to it. So that's just been fantastic. Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank our own team. And Fernanda in particular, who's been organising there this morning, and of course my colleague Brian. So thank you so much. We look forward to working with you into the future, hopefully. And we're very thankful to everybody who's joined us as well and attended the webinar this morning. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jim.